Amity begins the Owl House as a scared child controlled by the whims and desires of her parents. As a result, she affects an air of arrogant superiority, trying to convey the idea that she's better than everyone else, that she is the star premier student. She wants to believe, she needs to believe that this is the case because her very sense of self, the very nexus of her identity, depends squarely on this being the case. In truth, she's insecure and she's doubtful and she doesn't have a clear idea of who she, as a person, outside the expectations placed on her, actually is. She tries desperately to abide by a sense of what is right and appropriate communicated by her parents and by society at large, and when she can't do that, she feels like a failure. Freud talks extensively about this in his fantastic Civilization and Its Discontents. I really recommend you read that if you haven't already, even if you're not a big Freud fan. We construct these impossible ideals of who we are supposed to be. Sometimes these ideals are superficially beneficial, sometimes they're more troublesome. They have more apparent flaws, but that doesn't really matter. What matters to Freud is that these ideals are impossible for us to achieve, they're impossible for us to embody. And because of that, having these lofty ideals and trying desperately to measure ourselves up to those ideals does not actually make us better people. It doesn't make us more moral or more compassionate or more proper. It just leaves us as flawed as we were before, only with a deep sense of shame and inferiority because we cannot achieve that lofty set of standards. We just feel more ashamed for the people we actually are. Amity is mostly in this position because of the negative influences of her parents, and we should rapturously applaud her for her ability to escape these influences, escape these expectations, and instead commit herself to what actually matters to her, her burgeoning sense of what she actually believes, and the people she loves and cares about, especially Luce. I wonder if we will see Amity's parents again. I assume we will, as I was kind of expecting them to play a more major role in the show than they have. They're really interesting characters in their own rights, being these very rich and powerful and influential weapons dealers and manufacturers. But they're also important for how they affect Amity. I don't think Amity's struggle to really define herself can be understood completely outside the context of the influences of her parents. We first see the burdens her parents have placed on her in the episode Understanding Willow, in which they are in silhouette. This is in the past. Amity is just a little child. She wants to keep being friends with Willow, but her parents don't think Willow is good enough to be friends with her, so they make her sever her connection to Willow. It's a very cold and heartbreaking moment. And because her parents push her away from the sources of true friendship, she doesn't have actual friends at the start of the Owl House. She just has acquaintances, allies, that she can rely upon, who have similar interests to her, and that they're firmly enmeshed in the upper structure of the society. When she is interacting with these acquaintances, she's cold and distant and callous. And she's not wrong to be this way because she has no desire to be friends with these people. She views them with disdain because she correctly intuits that they are conceited, arrogant, and self-aggrandizing. What she really wants in the core of herself is to be close with Willow and later close with Luce, but she's afraid to admit that, because if she admits that this is a desire she has, that puts her in conflict with the structures she is supposed to abide by. As Amity matures, she steadily grows more distant to her parents. She stops listening to them. And this is a relief. It's a triumph for Amity. It's a big risk that she is taking, and it really demonstrates how she is defining herself. And I really hope the show explores the fallout from her decision to cut her connections with her parents, because that is a big risk. Amity was scared of her parents before. She was scared of what they would do to her, and she was not wrong to be scared. She was just a little kid. What could she do to stop them from cutting off her ties with Willow? Even now, she's still only a teenager. Whereas her parents are some of the most powerful people in this world. They can make her life very miserable if they want to, and we see that in Escaping Expulsion, episode 2 of season 2. In that episode, Amity is helpless and powerless as her parents coerce Hexide into expelling Luce, Gus, and Willow. This happens after Adelia, Amity's mother, learns that Amity is drifting away from her parents' influence because she has this new group of friends that she is loyal to, and Adelia wants to cut off Amity's ties with these people. And when this happens, when they are expelled, Luce looks to Amity for support, but Amity can't offer anything. She's too frightened, she's too scared. She feels such a burden to live up to the image of the person her parents want her to be, even though she herself by this point has no desire to be that person anymore. As confident as Amity has grown, her defiance melts away initially in the face of parental retribution and retaliation. But by the end of the episode, Amity is placed in a position where she has to make a decisive choice. On one side, there is her parents, and on the other side, there is Luce, the person she cares about the most in the world, and she has to choose, because her parents are terribly threatening Luce. Luce could die if Amity doesn't do something. Ultimately, Amity, to paraphrase a quote from Avatar, loved Luce more than she feared her parents. This was a difficult, frightening decision for Amity to make, but now that she's made it, now that she's crossed that Rubicon, she's free. It's a terrifying, exhilarating kind of freedom, but she takes advantage of it. After finally abandoning her parents' influence, she feels liberated to make other changes to her life. She grows bolder, she changes the style of her hair, and she dyes it pink. She kisses Luce, and by the end of episode 8, knocking on Hootie's door, she is in an official relationship with Luce. All of this would have seemed unimaginable to Amity just at the beginning of season 2. She has grown so much as a person in the first half of season 2. She's grown not just bolder, but more defiant, more willing to create a path for herself, even if it is a path contrary to the paths her parents want her to take. That growth has been exciting. She no longer has to be this arrogant, conceited, perfectionist, little perfect person that her parents are trying to make her be, and she is thrilled by that. She's haunted by the possible fallout from that, but she's thrilled. And that's a tough position to be in, as exciting as it is. And I wish the show explored this a little more, but we do see it partly in the show's depictions of her relationships with others, and how closely she clings to those relationships for stability and support in the aftermath of her growing more distant from her parents and defying their directives. In Through the Looking Glass Ruins, Amity cares deeply for her job at the library, and when Luce causes her to lose it, Amity sinks into sort of depression, and Luce is so guilty and so moved by Amity's passion for this job that Luce endures a lot to get Amity that job back. It's that important to Amity, and Amity is, of course, that important to Luce. Now, I did not feel quite as viscerally for Amity's passion for the job as I could have, because it was not introduced before this point. There's difficulty in making the audience care so much about that which has just been introduced in this episode. It can seem not necessarily random, but not as fully supported by the rest of the text as it could otherwise have been. But what I did really latch onto and feel was emotionally raw and honest is Amity's clinging to this kind of connection. She has an immense need for the sense of belonging, and the show demonstrates this even more viscerally in Knock Knock Knockin' on Hooty's Door, the 8th episode of Season 2. After the kiss, what Amity wants more than anything is confirmation that her relationship with Luce is solid, that Luce will be there for her, that Luce is not going to try and walk this back, that she and Luce will be there for each other. There's that sense of connection and belonging and this deep primordial sense of oneness and unity. That's what Amity wants more than anything. So when Luce is being anxious and nervous and trying to be more tentative with Amity, that is exactly the wrong approach to take. Hooty, for once, was right. What Amity wants more than anything is to not be alone, to have firm connections upon which she can rely. She's enduring a difficult transition in her life as she goes from being this perfect little obedient daughter to being a person with her own values and her own ideals and her own convictions that she pursues in order to achieve her own ends, her own passionate desires of what she wants for herself and her life. It's a triumph for Amity, but it's a triumph that is easier for her because she knows that she's not alone, that she has others that she can rely upon. And on the top of that list is Luce. Luce is there for her. Luce will support her. And that, more than anything, means the world to Amity. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. I'm sure it'll be back from hiatus in like 3 or 4 months. So what do you want to see from Season 2B? What do you think is going to happen to Amity? Do you want to see more of her parents? Sound off in the comments. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.